Hello, everyone, and welcome to another session of the Citrix Session, our blog about all things, or our podcast rather, about all things Citrix. My name is Bill Sutton. I'm your host today. I also have with me Todd Smith from Citrix. Todd, you want to say hello to our audience?
Sure. Hey, Bill, and everyone out in listening land. Glad to be back. I think this is the best for me. It's like 3 weeks in a row we've been able to jump on.
I know it's last week we had everybody. I
Yeah.
think we had everybody, including our guests. If
Yeah.
our listeners haven't heard the one from last week, that's the one with Citrix and Nutanix. So we had a guest on that. So I encourage you to go back and listen to that. Todd, I've had a number of folks recently that I've been on calls with that said, "Yeah, I listened to your podcast. I was at a meeting at a customer. Was it last week? Yeah, last week on Thursday down in Norfolk, Virginia, and somebody even commented there that, yeah, I enjoy listening to the podcast. I listen to them on my way to or from work." Forget what she said. So we definitely are getting some traction, though I haven't looked lately to see what the numbers look like.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting between podcasts and audiobooks. I've really stopped listening to the radio unless it's listening to like live baseball games or some sports radio talk. But it's been kind of a pretty large shift for me. It's between audiobooks and podcasts. This is one of those podcasts that I listen to religiously. So
Yeah, I listen to that's what I've started doing too on my trips down to Huntersville from Richmond. It's about a 4.5 hour drive, and I've found myself listening to a variety of podcasts, some
yep.
that are directly relevant to our industry, and some that are more general. I don't know if you ever heard of the Acquired or ACQ podcasts. Those are actually pretty good. Acquired is a couple of guys. I think were in the financial space that basically take a company like Microsoft or Meta or Google, and they just break it apart and talk about the founding, and they interview some of the founders, and they talk about how the company got started and how it grew, and it's fascinating, quite frankly. They actually did like a two-part series on Standard Oil of California going back a century. That one was
Really?
fascinating, talking about the Rockefeller family and the trusts and how he got going. So it's a very interesting one. You might want to. It's called Acquired, just the word.
Okay.
It's most of theirs are very long, but they have ACQ two, which is their sister, which is typically just about an hour, hour and a half. Most of their acquired podcasts are like 4 to 5 hours, so it's a commitment.
Yeah.
But most of the time, I can listen to them on my drive to Charlotte, which I'll be doing
Yeah.
again next week. So
Yeah, I've become accustomed to listening to it at like 1.7 speed, so it speeds
yeah,
it up a little bit,
yeah,
makes it go a little bit faster.
for sure.
Some of them I've been re-listening to, or actually listening to, but I've read the books a couple of times, and
Hmm.
that is Shelby Foote's trilogy on the American Civil War,
Oh wow.
and
Okay.
I'm through volume two. I'm starting up volume three, but that's like a 25-hour
Oh
audio book,
wow.
each one of them. So
Yeah.
takes a little time, but it's going pretty well. And then from a podcast perspective, I've found, Mike Rowe,
Hmm. Hmm.
the way I heard it, and then also Ryan Hawk does one called The Learning Leader, which is really, really good.
I'll have to
And
check that out. Yeah.
brings in brings in guests from the industry,
Hmm.
all kinds of different industries, and kind of works through that leadership perspective. So,
Right. Cool. All
yep.
right. So today we're going to cover a blog article, the title of which is What's New and Next. You know what? I just realized, Todd, I didn't say what episode. This is episode 181. I knew I
Yeah,
was missing
getting
something.
closer to 200, Bill.
Getting one more closer to 200. So yeah, this is episode 181. So we're shooting for that magic 200 number sometime between now and the end of the year, hopefully.
Yep.
And we got a good chance of making it. So.
Yeah, I think so.
All right, so back to the blog article. It's entitled "What's New and Next with Citrix?" Q&A from our May 2025 webinar. It's written by Bill Gray, who I believe is a CTO with Citrix. Is that right?
Yep, he's one of our CTOs that we
Hmm.
recently brought in. He's been here for about a year. You'll get a chance to see Bill present at things like Citrix Connect, which is our roadshow, multi-city roadshow. And he does an awful lot of kind of forward thinking. He and Sean Bass, and we've also hired Brian Madden. Dan Feller's coming back. There's a variety of folks that are kind of in this role of a field-based CTO. And Bill comes to us from the healthcare space. I actually had him as a customer years and years ago when he was with Cigna. And,
Right.
he's always bringing a lot of good insights into not only where we are, but also what's coming down the pipe. And, I think this blog takes a very interesting perspective and approach towards talking about what's new and what's next.
Yep. Yeah, this is based off of, obviously by the title, based off a webinar that Citrix did back in May,
Yep.
A month ago or so. And it's really just a Q&A. So this is a little bit different for us because it's really very various topics. And I'll just talk about each major heading, and then Todd and I can delve into to the various elements there. So start off, like I said, this is a Q&A that I think were questions that were asked and answered during the webinar, and many that perhaps were answered later by virtue of this blog article. So the first section deals with the release cadence and what's included in entitlements. And I don't know about you, Todd, before we get into this, I still see customers that don't really understand this concept of UHMC and Citrix platform and even CPC for that matter. So maybe if you don't mind, give a high level of that for our listeners, for those who may not really understand that.
Sure. So if you look back, the way we used to license our products was based on which delivery method you're using. So there was an on-prem license model. There was a cloud-based licensing model. And in the cloud-based licensing model, there was different products available for Azure, for AWS, for GCP. And you really could never mix and match those licenses across the different delivery models that are out there. So what we did is we introduced Universal Hybrid Multi-Cloud, which allows you to have one single license that you could run on-prem, in the cloud, public cloud, or private cloud, as well as in a hybrid mode, right? So not having to go and worry about this license is affiliated with Azure. That means I can't take that same license and use it on-prem or in a hybrid approach. What we did with UHMC is we basically flattened all that out, and then we added in some of the core components that are included in a Citrix ecosystem. And those core components include not only the apps and desktop capabilities, but the VPN gateway capabilities, so your remote access license, as well as things like PVS and MCS and Windows Workspace environment management, right? Adding in the profile management capabilities. So all of these individual products kind of got merged into one single SKU for the customer to buy that can cover all the different delivery models and include all of the capabilities that they need. Now, we've also added some new acquisitions. We've added Device Trust, we've added Uber Agent, we've added Unicon. Those licenses have also been included into the UHMC licenses. What makes UHMC different from what we call CPL or our platform license? Platform license includes an unlimited number of connections. So think of it as a custom wall-to-wall purchase, right? So if I've got X number of users, I can license all of my users as part of a platform license. But I can also turn it around and add in some of those corner use cases, like, for instance, Strong Network or our secure development workspace. We've also added in some unlimited capabilities as well into it. CPL is more of a negotiated pricing model as opposed to UHMC, which is still based on a concurrent user or user device model from a licensing perspective. And then Citrix Private Cloud is kind of one of those products that you mentioned, Bill, that we're not seeing a lot of traction on it, but we're seeing some customers leverage it mostly on the SMB space, some of the small mid-sized business cases. We're kind of not seeing a lot of traction there, but and the reason why is because that's traditionally just a virtual app or a virtual desktop use case.
Yeah, that's mostly on-prem or
Yep.
entirely on-prem.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah, and we're kind of in the same boat. We don't see a lot of that. Really, what we see more of is customers leveraging the CSP licensing that we can offer them
Correct.
that enables fully UHMC functionality as opposed to CPC. If they don't need or want or have any desire for cloud, then a lot of times CPC is where they go.
Yep.
But that's pretty. I could probably count on one hand the number of CPC deals we've done since it was available.
Yep.
Most folks understand the value of the cloud and want to go that direction.
Yep.
Yeah. All right. So again, under the first section here, release cadence and what's included, the first question that's posed here is, when is the next CVAD LTSR? And LTSR, of course, stands for long-term service release. The cadence of this has changed somewhat. The next version is targeted for 2507. So that would be this.
It'll be July. That's coming right around the corner, Bill.
Right around the corner. That's right. So there is an early access release program for this, but those are generally limited to and recommended in non-production cases.
Yep.
But maybe we should talk a little bit about the LTSR concept and what's changed in that, Todd, if you've got that.
Sure. Yeah. So a couple of things, right? So we used to do LTSRs every couple of years.
Right.
What we realized, when you have a LTSR, that's a long-term service release, which means we're going to allow it to be run for multiple years and still provide services, right? And it's not going to be the same as a current release. Current release is whatever's new gets added into it. It requires a lot of updates and some testing and things like that. But there's some features that get dropped into the current release that customers were having to wait till the next LTSR to get it into a long-term solution that only has to get upgraded on a less frequent basis. In response to that request from a lot of customers, we came with the conclusion that we need to speed up the frequency of our long-term service releases. So with this year, we're starting off on an annual LTSR, and then there will be two CRs, two current releases sprinkled throughout the rest of the year. The value there is that you're still going to get the benefit of the long-term service release. It's still going to be multiple years, but we're going to be releasing those on a more frequent basis. So what that means is you're not going to have to wait for, hey, there's a new feature or a new function that's been added in here, or there was a private hotfix that we're going to have to wait a couple of years before it actually gets put into a long-term acceptable service release. So the big benefit there is that we've increased the frequency of LTSRs to allow customers to go on the most recent, updates, still providing that long-term service and support, and then be able to also have that impact on our overall release schedule. We do have an updated product lifecycle page directly off Citrix.com. So you can actually see what our life cycles are going to look like. And this is where it's critical, right? We've got a lot of new capabilities that are being put into the product and where it fits in. So customers aren't going to have to wait a long period of time to make use of those.
Exactly. So again, tell me again here. I'm pretty sure it's in the next question. The next question on here was, where can you get more details on the release cadence? And Todd did a great job just describing that. Well, relative to LTSR, it's going to be each year, right? Either Q2 or Q3.
Yeah, it's going to be once a year for LTSR and twice a year for the current releases.
The current releases. Yeah, good stuff. Yeah, that'll enable customers that need the longer support window being able to get new features quicker. For sure. All right. The next question was, does using Windows 365 with Citrix require extra licensing? And I think you and I know, Todd, it does not. As long as they have an active Citrix subscription, they can use that for Windows 365 machines. Any further comments on that?
Yeah, so I think this is probably a question that I get asked probably 3 or 4 times a week. Some of my peers and some of the folks on the ATS team get asked this question almost daily. And I'm sure you as a partner get asked this multiple times, even more than we do. But really, this is a way to leverage a truly a better together story of Windows 365 and specifically like the cloud PC capabilities connected in with Citrix, right? So this is where this is where our relationship with Microsoft has really come to a fruition of being able to uh, leverage the new licensing models as well as being able to deliver some high quality applications and some of those additional functionalities. So a lot of the HDX capabilities that customers have gotten used to, being able to leverage that in a Windows 365 or an AVD type of delivery scenario.
Yeah, I use it every day.
Yep.
I leverage a Windows 365 Cloud PC directly through the Citrix Workspace app. I turn on my laptop, which is really nothing more now than a thin client, a glorified Windows thin client. Turn on my laptop, fire up the Workspace app, and launch my Cloud PC. The beauty of it is I just got a keyboard for my iPad, and I can be very productive just on my 11-inch iPad, believe it or not, with accessing through Citrix. I can do Teams meetings, Zoom meetings. It works great. So.
And if you think about it, Bill, this is something that we demonstrated probably 15 years ago at a Synergy or an iForum. It was kind of called the Nirvana phone, where your phone was just an access point into a virtual app and virtual desktop environment. And by using things like some of the Bluetooth mouse capabilities and the extended connecting to a physical monitor and being able to say, hey, I've got my compute device now. The thing that I use to access the entire environment is nothing more than a smartphone.
Right.
Think about how this has all changed. You just described your primary workload is being run in the cloud someplace, and all you're using is the smallest, minimalist device you can have to just act as a connection point to that. And we're seeing a lot of customers that are saying, hey, you know what? We really need to have a thin client like experience. And we talked about this on a couple of blog posts or a couple of podcasts ago, right? Where we talked about the movement towards thin client computing as a way to deal with Windows 11 challenges, to deal with hardware requirements for Windows 11, to deal with supply chain issues, to deal with tariffs and things like that. But it really is. It's a way to reduce the management costs of those endpoints and yet still maintain that level of an awesome user experience for the end user.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So next question is concerning Chrome Enterprise Premium and whether that's included in the Citrix licensing. Chrome Enterprise Premium, which I'm sure Todd can talk about here because I think you just started using it recently. This is the evolution of the Citrix Enterprise browser, Enterprise, the Enterprise browser, leveraging Chrome Enterprise Premium, and it is included in the Citrix licensing at the platform level.
At the platform level, that's correct.
You want to expound on that some, Todd, as well?
Sure. So several years ago, we introduced the Citrix Enterprise browser, which is a Chromium-based solution that still required a little bit of additional infrastructure to be able to make it run. Recently, we made an announcement about a partnership with Google to provide Chrome Enterprise Premium as part of your Citrix license. And this is going to be, it's a native Chrome-based browser that can be fully managed. All of your policies that you're used to with a Citrix session and things like that, those have come across. And the benefit here is, number one, you can lock down what can be done to that browser. Number two is it leverages the local resources on that endpoint, still maintains centralized control. And centralized control can be everything from the policies to all of the ingress and egress points throughout that browser connection, and also what you can do with the actual data. So a lot of organizations are concerned with privacy laws and compliance programs and DLP for data protection. The enterprise browser approach eliminates a lot of that risk and makes it much more manageable.
Yeah. Yeah, this is a really neat addition to the platform, for sure, and helps us answer the question about, do I need VDI or do I need published apps to deliver a SaaS app? And the answer is you can use it that way, and we've been using it that way for years. But in situations where you want to leverage the browser, the native browser, but still have that policy-based control for what the user can do and secure your data, that's where the combination of the Chrome Enterprise Premium offering, as well as traditional app publishing or VDI for those legacy apps and for other uses, become a great combination. The next question is relative. It says, is Elux separately licensed? Elux is the endpoint operating system that's part of the Unicon acquisition. So Unicon is the product, if you will. Again, and the Elux is part of that product, and it is fully available as part of both Universal Hybrid Multi-Cloud, or UHMC, as well as the platform license.
That's correct.
Anything else to add there, Todd?
Yeah, and I think a lot of organizations are really kind of looking at ways to reduce their overall endpoint costs. This is a way to not only reduce it, but also to kind of defer those purchases out over the next couple of years while we figure out what we're going to do with supply chain issues, what we're going to do with, some of the Windows 11 migrations, and then more importantly, adjusting towards, as I mentioned before, adjusting towards how do we deal with things like tariffs and, and chip shortages and things like that.
Yeah. All right, that covers the first category. Second category, identity and access, Entra ID, FAS, and SPA. So the first question here is, can we use Entra ID SSO without FAS for on-prem environments? And the answer at this point is not yet. On-prem CVAD requires AD and Entra ID with FAS. Apparently, DAS will initially support Entra ID with CVAD to support as follows. I know that you can't get SSO without FAS, but of course, without FAS with Entra ID, the user just has to sign in with their credentials twice. But there have been some articles that you can find, blog posts, where folks have kind of reverse engineered it in a way and made it so that you can make it work, but it's not supported, right, Todd?
Yeah, and Bill, this is kind of an interesting part of the conversation, because if you look at Entra ID, or what used to be known as Azure Active Directory, and Federated Authentication Services, as well as that whole concept around single sign-on, it relies so much on trust relationships that are set. And the challenge sometimes that we have has been not all of the single sign-on relationship developments and relationship management is effective right now, right? So it's fairly complex. We're looking for ways to simplify it and make it so you can establish not only a bi-directional trust, but also identify which ones are going to be one-way trust. And the benefit here is that a lot of organizations have multiple Active Directory domains and multiple forests and things like that really make it very complex. And we really need to make sure that not only Citrix, but also some of the industry partners like Microsoft and some of the identity providers that are out there are all on the same page when it comes to how to clearly define what is the role of single sign-on, what is the role of trust relationships, and what is the role of managing those effectively. And in some cases, it's going to be a lot of automation has to be put into place.
Yeah, exactly. So the next question is, Entra ID SSO dependent on the endpoint OS? And the answer is yes, based on the specific workspace app for it to work end to end. And then the following question is whether it works on Mac or Chrome OS. And the response here is the goal is cross-platform support wherever workspace app is available. But I think there's still some more technical details, as you alluded to, Todd, that need to be worked out during the tech preview that's forthcoming.
Correct. Yeah.
Uh,
And there's, once again, there's a lot of development activities
yeah.
between, you know, companies that are in some cases competing with each other. Um, there is no single, hey, here's the guidelines on how to write
Right.
and how to build single sign-on and trust relationships kind of across the board. Each one of the OS manufacturers have their own unique approach towards, what they're going to open up in their APIs to be able to do this.
The next question is an interesting one. What's the difference between secure browser and enterprise browser? And the explanation is in the blog article, but fundamentally, secure browser is like launching a browser in a cloud. It's an isolated browser.
Correct.
They refer to it as air-gapped enterprise browser running in the cloud. The enterprise browser natively is typically an installed product that's like your local browser, but it's got all the policy controls and things that Todd explained earlier built
Yeah.
around it to help provide security controls within the app itself. So it's more that's what Google, the Chrome enterprise browser that we were talking about earlier is. It's more of an enterprise browser. Secure browser is something that Citrix 1 point, I think, what did they call it?
We
Remote
used to,
installation or the,
so yeah,
oh,
so we used to sell it as a service, right? So
yeah,
you could
yeah,
go to a hosted browser someplace, and then you could have. It was really intended for those customers who wanted to maintain traffic in a one single container
right,
and never have that content go back and forth out of that container.
right,
So think of it as like doing financial transactions or doing something that you really want to limit what people can do, who can do it, what they can do when they're in it, and make sure that there's no data leakage across any of the
right.
other applications that user has.
Yeah, and typically a secure browser is the kind of thing where you access it and then once you're finished, it's
Yeah,
destroyed.
yeah,
So that's not how all of them do it, but that's kind of how it was done with Citrix back in the
correct.
day. Yeah. Next category is Elux and Unicon integrations, and we touched on some of this earlier.
Yeah.
But the first one is, what is Elux and how is it used with Citrix?
Yeah. So if you look at it, Elux is it's a secure
Yeah,
Linux-based OS that is purpose built for VDI and hosted applications, right? So this is something that was built specifically for a use case where you're walking up to, you've got basically a kiosk-like experience. Um, and it's going to allow you to connect into virtual apps, desktops, DAS, or leveraging Citrix Workspace to get a connection directly into a Citrix environment. And this is something that can be deployed on-prem, in the cloud, or a hybrid setup, and be able to have that, that same consistent high level or high performance experience, regardless of what device you happen to be on. Elux basically allows you to dumb down the endpoint, but still be able to deliver, a high quality experience to that user.
yes. The next question, which you kind of answered in a way,
Yeah.
does it require domain join? And the short answer is no, it does not.
Nope. So here's the thing, right, Bill? The operating system on that endpoint, that secure Linux-based operating system with the Workspace app built into it, the Workspace app is what's doing the domain join component of it. That's where you identify your credentials. That's how you identify. You go through the authentication process, and then you get whatever services and resources and access that you need to have is then delivered to you as the individual on that. When you log out or when you reboot that machine, it is not connected to the domain. It's not containing any licenses. The user logging into that session is what is going to enable that authentication piece, and then be able to determine what services get delivered out to that.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Really key for kiosk-based, case-based deployments, and all of the management, which we'll talk about in a minute, is managed through the Scout
Yeah.
portal, which is the management framework for managing
Yeah.
all of these Elux-enabled devices. Can I use boot to VDI on hard disk with Elux? The answer is
Absolutely.
yes, absolutely. You can, have it boot automatically so that the user turns it on and they see their login page, to get into their published desktop. Obviously, the same types of security controls around, like things like MFA, and all of that would be driven by the policies set at the corporate level. So there's really nothing that needs to be done in that regard on Elux. That's all handled by the cloud authentication frameworks. You can boot it from a USB stick.
Yep.
Doesn't have to be installed locally on the device. It can be leveraged via USB stick.
Yep. Yeah, and there's been, the great thing about the way Bill has approached this response, Bill Gray has approached this response to this blog post, is really, he's inserted a lot of great videos and hyperlinks into it to really kind of drive this home. This video that's associated with this specific question is phenomenal when it comes to actually seeing what the user experience is like.
Right, for sure. The next question is, can I manage Elux devices without a VPN? And the short answer again is yes. You want to expound on that, Todd?
Yeah. So this is kind of interesting, right? Because one of the things that came with Unicon was this Scout Cloud Gateway, which is really, think of it as a micro VPN that allows that specific device to connect remotely and securely into the environment. Very similar to the way our VPN technology works, or our Citrix Secure Remote Access and Secure Gateway works. So I think there's probably going to be some features that we're going to be able to merge together here and make us more secure and much more user-friendly.
Great. The next one is, there support for USB redirection in Elux? And just yes, there is. Printers, scanners, smart card readers, etc. Again, like Todd mentioned, the management is all handled via the Scout portal, if you will. And there's some documentation you can refer to regarding the setting up of these USB type devices. That's kind of table stakes these days, right, Todd?
It is, and especially in some of the industries where we're seeing a lot of thin clients being used, healthcare specifically. I mean, you walk up to a thin client at a nurse's station, and it looks like the device is on life support. There's so many different USB devices plugged into it. There's printers, there's scanners, there's cameras, there's dictation microphones. There's all kinds of stuff that needs to go in there. And traditionally with Citrix, that was all part of your virtual app and virtual desktop experience.
All right.
We've incorporated all of that into Elux as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The last question in this category is, where can I find hardware requirements? There's a quick start guide referenced in the blog article, and then of course product documentation.
Yeah, the product documentation has a really good up-to-date hardware configuration or hardware compatibility list, similar to what you see with some of our other products, right? Can it work on these type of devices? Pretty much, if it's an x86 device with the right memory and RAM requirements in there, it's going to work pretty seamlessly. But it's always good to check the HDL. For
sure. All right, that's the end of the Elux category. We'll go to integrations with partners, and I kind of chuckled on the first one, knowing who my guest is on the podcast today. And your background, I'm going to let you take this one, but any updates on PVS integration with Nutanix? I love the fact that somebody asked this question. It demonstrates that PVS is still in the forefront, or at the forefront of a lot of administrators' minds, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. And as an original Ardents guy, it really kind of still makes my heart go warm with thinking that PVS is still used in a lot of organizations. But it's not just PVS, right? It's PVS and MCS all being managed with Web Studio. For us to build a relationship with Nutanix, we have to make sure that all of the tools that people are used to using in an on-prem environment are still able to be used in another partner's environment, whether it be a cloud partner or whether it be a traditional hardware partner like Nutanix, that really allows you to actually integrate it all together, right? That whole single pane of glass from a management perspective has become, it's no longer just a nice to have. it's become a requirement for every single organization out there. We talked about this last week on the podcast when we were talking with Nutanix.
We did.
Is the integration with things like Prism, the integration with of being able to manage some of the resources within the Nutanix area in as part of your studio and director, and vice versa, right? You want to be able to, from your Prism console, you want to be able to see what's actually running on those virtual machines and what's actually running in those workloads and how it can be best managed, right? So it's no longer these isolated silos of infrastructure.
Yes, and I found it interesting, the last sentence in this section: PVS provisioning using Web Studio MCS PVS is planned for an on-prem release by year end. That's great news. So
Yeah.
Web Studio integration with PVS, and I'm sure Citrix will take that even further going forward, to integrate that. The next question is Improvada SSO support for Elux coming? The answer is yes, later this year. And if you need to, are you interested in a proof of concept demo, contact your ATS or your Citrix rep in that regard.
And we've started showing that to a couple of healthcare customers, specifically that Improvada integration, and the ease of use of being able to do it.
Right.
And not only is it easy to use, but it's also easy to administer, right? So as I'm starting to leverage some of the tools, especially things around authentication techniques and things like that, I don't have to go through these multiple third-party vendors that have to kind of get in the middle of the authentication path, right? So being able to have it be natively supported is critical. And once again, it's coming up later on this year. We're still going through some final testing, and working closely with the team over at Improvada to make sure this works all the time.
Yeah. Yeah, there's another blog article from back in May that talks about this that we probably should cover at some point. We might wait until they release it and cover it then. So the next category, browser and endpoint security. We touched on this a little bit earlier, but there's some deeper questions here. First one, can I control local browsers to restrict SaaS access? The enterprise browser, you absolutely can. Supports endpoint enforcement of both managed and unmanaged devices, because the browser is effectively managed by a cloud-based console.
Correct.
So it's getting its orders from somewhere else. So you can even put it on an unmanaged device, right, Todd?
Yeah. And this is critical. I mean, a lot of organizations that we work with, and probably you guys as well, Bill, is that a lot of customers are going through some types of mergers and acquisition activity where they're onboarding new employees or they're onboarding consultants and third-party contractors. The days of having to ship out a laptop to every single new employee or every contractor, I mean, those are pretty much gone, right? Everyone's using their own BYO device, and oftentimes they're connecting in through some type of browser. Well, you need to make sure that you have the proper amount of controls in there. Everything from starting when you connect to the browser, it actually does and can actually execute an EPA scan, so an endpoint analysis, to make sure that that device doesn't have any critical security gaps. It can also lock down where they can store data, what they can do, what they can print, right? And hey, as one of the best fail safes out there, it's actually now putting the ability to watermark that browser session.
Yep.
So it has not only username and IP address. In some cases, you can put timestamps in there and things like that, which basically, if they did capture a screenshot of that or took a photo of that, the identifiable information that is actually follows the rules of evidence to actually make it more secure, and it deals with and it matches a lot of the compliance requirements that are out there for being able to identify, who has access to the data, and if it does somehow get printed or someone takes a photo of it, there's information that cannot be removed off of that screen to be able to show that. A lot of times you see this at banks and a lot of healthcare institutions and financial services and insurance companies. This is a critical part of their overall security posture.
Yeah, I think, one of the key things here talks about managed and unmanaged. So in the example you gave there, Todd, about coming from a home user PC or an unmanaged device, kind of one of the baseline things you would do, to your point, is you would enable watermarking. You would, via that scan, you would say, hey, is this managed or unmanaged?
Yep.
And then you'd lock down things like clipboard, copy and paste between their device and the session in the remote browser. And that session doesn't have to be isn't necessarily a Citrix session. It could be access to Salesforce or SAP or some other web-based or SaaS-based application. And you can lock down copying and saving files. You can lock down, a lot of this is table stakes, but bottom line is there's a lot of things you would do at the baseline. And then you could, through the endpoint scan, you could say, if it's a managed device, however, I'm going to relax those restrictions somewhat, based on knowing that I'm managing that device. And I have at least some general idea of how secure it is if it's, managed via my organization. So gives the administrators a lot of flexibilities and a lot of the policy framework that we've come to be used to in a Citrix-oriented VDI solution, where we can do a lot of these same things. That's now extended to the browser running on the user's endpoint. So it's very, very powerful.
Yep.
So the next question is Microsoft Edge supported with secure private access?
That's a no, but.
No, but yeah, that's what
answer, right? So no, it's SPA, Secure Private Access, is not currently supported by Microsoft Edge, or doesn't work with Microsoft Edge. But here's the solution. We do have a secure access agent,
right,
which is our zero trust network access agent that can be installed on the endpoint to be able to access or allow access to private web applications, right? So there is a solution. It's not SPA, but it is part of our zero trust or ZTNA approach.
Yeah. And then the last question in this category: can enterprise browser and DAS be managed from a single console? The answer is yes. Unified management.
Yeah, once again, that one single pane of glass to manage
right.
the environment comes through over and over. But here's the thing, right? We talk about the single pane of glass to manage and visualize things. But getting into that single pane of glass concept, that means all of the automation tools that are sitting behind that pane of glass can work seamlessly with each other, right? So I can put in automation. I can leverage things like some of the orchestrators that are out there, whether it be Terraform or Ansible. I can leverage it in with some of the workflows that are included with things like ServiceNow, right? The pane of glass is just the visualization piece of it. It's the inner workings, right? It's making sure that the recipe behind the scene is the same,
right?
And the tools all interact with each other.
Yeah, all the data's there.
Yep.
All right, that's pretty much it. The last question was, would the session recording be shared? And of course, if you want to go back and listen to the original webinar from May, there's a link here to allow you to listen to that. So that's really all that we had for this podcast episode, is reviewing this blog and the Q&A. Obviously, we always say this: if there's questions you have that have not been answered here, or answered in the webinar, or answered from any of our podcasts, just reach out to myself or your salesperson at XenTegra, or your Citrix ATS, or Mr. Smith on the call here. We're all willing to jump in and help and guide you to the right location to get answers to your questions. Any final thoughts, Todd?
You know what, Bill? I think we've started off a little bit of trepidation about how this was going to work out. I think it really worked out well.
It did. It was really a good article to kind of cover. And, certainly our listeners could go read this, but if you're driving in the car, at least this gives you the opportunity to, or even if you're not, gives you an opportunity to kind of hear us banter back and forth regarding the various questions. So again, if you have further questions or need additional information, don't hesitate to reach out to us. Thank you, Todd, for joining today.
Thanks, Bill. Have a wonderful 4th of July weekend.
Thanks, you too.
Thank you.
Thanks to our listeners, and we'll see you again next week.